everyone, and thanks for joining us today. If you're a business leader, a technologist, or an application owner who is challenged to move at pace on your innovation strategy, then you are in the right room. Because today we are going to talk about how thinking about cloud operations from day one can act as a catalyst for migration and modernization play. I'm Priyanka Chaturvedi, Senior Manager in AWS Managed Services team. And with me is George Irwin, the Director of Engineering from SVH Media. And we will cover how you can transform your business using AWS Cloud and your in-house resources. Let's check the agenda. Today we're going to start off talking about the common challenges faced by you as you look to transform your business. What AWS tools and services are available for you? We'll then speak with our customer, Singapore Press Holdings Media, in terms of what were their cloud adoption challenges and how they leveraged AWS Managed Services to expedite their journey. And finally, we'll recap the session. So let's get started. Speaking to you, we learned that you want to leverage AWS Cloud to transform your business, which means you want to be able to quickly react to changing market demands, use data and insight to learn about your customer's sentiment. What is their product usage behavior? What are their buying patterns? And use this information to build and launch new products, services, and open up new channels. So you want your organization to be more agile and reduce time to market. But while you want your organization to be more agile, think fast, fail fast, experiment more, what you don't want to do is introduce new business risks. What are these risks? It could be anything: security, financial risk, or risk related to compliance. Now, as you look at these risks, as an example, a bad security posture can lead to a malware attack. That damages your brand name. It has financial implications too. The other thing that you also want to do is your business critical applications should not have a single point of failure, which means that in case of an outage, your application can quickly bounce back, be more resilient, maintain business continuity. In fact, you want your customer experience to be maintained and eliminate any kind of revenue impact. You want all this and more. High operational excellence bar, higher efficiency for your team. But all this at a lower cost. So you want to reimagine the role of data and compute as you build your IT systems in the cloud. Now, while these are the objectives with which you come to cloud, you often face challenges. So how many of you have faced challenge hiring cloud talent? Yeah? Exactly. Skills gap is the single biggest obstacle for customers innovating at pace. It is tough to hire and retain cloud talent. The talent pool is limited, and every other organization is trying to hire from the same pool that you are trying to hire from. So access to technology is no longer the barrier. finding people with the right mindset and skill to make it happen for you is the real challenge. And now some of your organization would have a limited capacity of cloud talent. Often when you have a small team with a unique skill, the real challenge is how do you effectively utilize these resources? Do you use them for migration? Because you have to exit the data center first. Or do you use them for cloud operations? Because workloads that are running in cloud have to be operated. Or do you use your in-house resources to modernize your workloads? Because that's where you're going to leverage the benefits of cloud. Also remember, as your workloads come out of the data center, you want them to land in an environment which has good governance and control framework around it. You don't want every business unit to operate the way they want. Everyone having their unique configurations, unique controls. You want to standardize and baseline them, which means you need to put in time and effort to do that. To add, your IT team has this pressure to define, design, and implement the security controls that meet your unique compliance needs. It can take you years to build those controls. And not only do you have to build and deploy these controls, you have to provide evidence to your regulators that you are complying by them. Putting this together, you need to have people who understand cloud, who understand security. What are the latest security trends? What are the latest security threats that you should learn about and weave it in your technology? And then you need people who understand compliance. What new security controls have to be built? And what compensating controls you already have in play? Last but not the least, we often see that as you come to cloud, you bring your legacy operational practices along. I mean, while these were perfectly fine for on-premise, they are not designed for modern cloud, and they can basically slow you down, take away efficiency from your team. And we are going to look at how our customer has leveraged their in-house resources and looked at newer processes to expedite their transformation journey. So enterprises need help adopting AWS so they can build their cloud-powered digital business. If you don't solve for these challenges, you're basically stuck in the data center. You have stalled migration. Either way, the objectives that you wanted to accomplish from cloud is not met. Working backwards from what you told us, we built AWS Managed Services, also known as AMS. AMS accelerates cloud adoption by taking away critical but undifferentiated activities such as optimizing and operating your AWS environment. And when we do these activities on your behalf, it frees up your in-house resources. And they can then focus on what's most important for your business. That could mean migration or modernization. AMS does this by bringing in people, process, technology, backed by AWS best practices to instill operational rigor in your environment. Think of AMS as Lego blocks that sits on top of your organization's existing fabric to exponentially expand the performance and efficiency of your IT teams. Let's dive into them more. On the people block, AMS brings in cloud experts such as service delivery manager, cloud architect, a 24/7 cloud operations and security team. And this integrates with your organization's existing cloud center of excellence or cloud platform and engineering team. Under the process block, AMS brings in operational integration processes such as incident management, patching and backup process, alarm notification mechanism. How do you want to consume an infrastructure alarm that is raised in an environment? And we not only bring about these processes, we also run simulation game days to validate that the workflow is actually giving you the results that you are after. And this integrates with your organization's existing ITIL process. AMS is driven by automation, and it is built around the fundamentals of AWS best practice. So it uses AWS services such as Amazon Guard Duty, Macie, config rules, systems manager, CloudWatch, just as an example. Now that you know the basic framework of AMS, let's dive into the 5 operational excellence pillar that AMS is built on. And we are going to start with security, because generally that's top of mind for everyone. AMS protects your environment by deploying more than 150 security checks and guardrails. These controls are built using Amazon Guard Duty, Macie, config rules, the tools that you use on a day-to-day basis. These detective controls ensure that your AWS account comply with the industry standard of security and operational integrity. Your environment is then protected 24/7 from failures, performance degradation, and security incident. How do we do that? We deploy curated CloudWatch alarm across your AWS account and its resources. They then monitor your environment 24/7 for proactive incident detection and remediation. Our cloud experts are going to work with your teams to define patching and backup policies. Remember, these are the backups that can then be used for recovery purposes in order to maintain business continuity. So your environment is protected and it is monitored. So what happens on an ongoing basis? Our automation engine and our cloud experts are going to work with your team to drive efficiency by continuously finding ways to reduce operational risks, optimize your environment, and reduce cost. As an example, our cloud experts will help prioritize the trusted advisor findings and remediate them on your approval. We'll run cost optimization exercises with your teams to bring down the cost. And the good thing is, each time we run these activities in your account, the outcome of these activities would be demonstrated in monthly business review report. So you have complete visibility of what's happening in your AWS account from an operational risk management perspective, from a financial perspective, or day-to-day incident management. Coming to resiliency, we have built AMS on a continuous learning mechanism, which means that each time we interact with you, whether it is on an incident or a game day, or even on a problem management ticket, we are going to take back those learnings to see, is there something that needs to be rethought upon? Runbooks should be updated? Should new automation be built? Or should we define a new metric to monitor? And this iterative approach allows us to continuously learn and optimize the environment on your behalf. Coming to compliance, because that's the most interesting thing people want to talk about. It takes the longest to become compliant. AMS has compliance eligibility for HIPAA, PCI, SOC 1, 2, and 3, GDPR, just to name a few. Today, we have critical healthcare, public sector, and financial workloads being run and managed by AMS. And with the operational regime that we bring to the table, we are confident that we'll be able to provide you an accelerated path to meeting your unique compliance needs. So come and speak to us. Now, we have covered on a high level what are the activities that AMS can do on your behalf, so it gives back some time to you. Let's put this in perspective. Imagine a business unit has an AWS account. This AWS account is running certain workloads. These workloads are running on EC2. They're using an RDS database for their database management. Load balancers are in place. S3 objects are being used. What does AMS do? AMS would deploy security controls for account boundary security purpose, as well as each resource inside the account. All your resources are then monitored for failures. Your EC2 instance will be patched and backed up. There are checks in place to make sure, by no mistake, your S3 objects have public read-write access. Are your access keys being rotated? Are your RDS snapshots being encrypted? And so many more such checks. So put this in perspective. If so many of your daily activities are taken care of, now your in-house resources can focus to deliver on what matters to your business. The business differentiators. How you patch your environment compared to another organization is not your differentiator. That's not how you build your product. So focus on building business differentiators. So is that enough? Are there other operational processes that can be further tuned to drive efficiency home? Let me ask you, how do you know application downtime impacts your business? I'd like to share the details from a recent IDC study, which states that enterprise-like organizations face 29 unplanned outages per year. Each outage can take on an average 5 hours to repair. That makes it to 145 hours of lost productivity per IT resource. Bear in mind, this is the time that your expensive and scarce IT resource should have been spending on building your serverless application, your DevOps pipeline, or designing your data strategy. Worst of all is that it impacts to a $13.5 million of revenue loss. It doesn't even stop there. It impacts your brand name, and there could be compliance checks that you have missed because of these unplanned outages. Is there a way to think of resiliency differently as you come to cloud? I'm going to share some use cases in terms of how you can proactively detect incident and remediate them. AMS has a comprehensive library of standard use case that allows you to proactively identify an incident and remediate them. Let's start with the use case. There is a workload that is running on an EC2 instance. The EC2 instance is running out of disk space. We know what happens after that. This workload is being managed by AMS, which means we have our checks, guardrails, and monitoring in place. We get to know that your disk space is reaching a particular threshold. Our automation kicks in, and it instantly expands the disk volume, averting an incident from happening. Your customer experience remains intact. Even your IT team doesn't know about the fact that there was an alarm behind the scene. Zero human touch. However, the story doesn't end there. We are in a continuous learning mechanism, so we want to know, why did the alarm trigger in the first place? Did you underestimate the disk capacity? Or has there been a change in application design? Our cloud experts are going to work with your key stakeholders to understand what has changed. We do this by raising an operational risk with you and working to identify the root cause of this additional log that is getting generated. Working with your team, we identify that the log retention policy for your application had in fact changed, which was causing the excessive logging. Your application team fixes it, and thereafter, the alarm doesn't trigger, which is exactly what we want. Now, we understand not every application falls in a standard use case. You all are unique, and so are your applications. They're becoming more and more complex day by day. So what do we do for unique, complex application needs? Let's pick another example. There is a critical banking application, and it has a microservice that allows online banking users to look at their transactions. This microservice uses AWS High Performance File Service, FSX. The FSX partition here is filling up, at which point your banking users will start getting an application 5xx or equivalent error. They get the error, they call your call center. Your call center starts getting these numerous incidents being reported by your end customers. They start transferring these tickets to your IT system. Your IT team picks up this incident, and they start working on the resolution. And hence those 5 hours that we discussed earlier. This is a very reactive approach to incident management. Your customer was impacted first. You are at the receiving end of that incident. Is there a way that we can change how we manage our incidents by giving it a more proactive spin? AWS Incident Detection and Response is how. Let's see how we can do this. Now, critical banking application, such unique critical workloads that has massive impact on your customer experience and on your business, we recommend it should be monitored via AWS Incident Detection and Response, also known as IDR. What does that mean? A team of cloud experts are going to work with your microservices team, as per this example, to understand what is the architecture of this microservice. What AWS services does it use? Who are the key point of contacts for your microservices team? Sometimes looking at an infrastructure alarm is not enough. We need to tie the application alarm to the infrastructure alarm. That's exactly what will be done in this case. A composite alarm is built looking at the health of microservice that relies on the health of the FSx service. This composite alarm is now going to be set up for monitoring. That's one part of the story. The second part is our teams will work with your application team to prepare a response plan. What is a response plan? Well, the response plan will have the key contacts for your microservices team, the architecture of your application, high-level troubleshooting steps or remediation steps. In case this alarm gets triggered, what should be done? And all this is set aside. Now imagine in the future, if this alarm was to trigger, an AWS incident management engineer is going to pick up your response plan and set up a bridge call with your microservices team, because their details are in the response plan. In as little as 15 minutes, we will have core team of AWS along with yourselves on a bridge call to solve for the issue. This means bringing in people from AMS operations, support engineering, FSx service team, as per this example, and we start working towards the resolution. The incident gets resolved, and the whole cycle of doing a root cause analysis starts again. So we are going to look at why did the alarm trigger in the first place, what new automation can be built, what new metrics can be deployed, the flywheel of continuous learning. What we have achieved with this exercise is reduced your mean time to resolution of incidents. The bottom line is, you have to move away from the traditional way of doing things. Adopt new trends that are out there. Incident detection and response improves observability. It cuts down productivity loss, revenue loss, and reduces chances of having such outages. We know you all are going to be on a unique maturity curve as you come to cloud. AMS can take care of infrastructure operations for you, so you focus on building innovation muscle. Learn to tweak your organization's structure and processes to facilitate innovating in the cloud. And this will set up a solid foundation for yourselves. Give up control and bring in cloud experts, because cloud operations might not be your core competency the day you start. With that, let me call you on stage George Irwin, the Director of Engineering for SPH Media, who have been using AMS to drive operational outcomes while keeping their own team focused on modernization.
Thank you, Priyanka. SPH Media is a news and media organization. We publish all of Singapore's newspapers in both digital and print formats. We publish newspapers in 5 languages and our flagship English daily newspaper is The Straits Times, which has been published in Singapore since 1845 and has a daily readership of around 2 million. We also have a Chinese language daily newspaper called Zhaobao with a global audience of around 7 million. I'd like to set a bit of context around SPH by talking briefly about our mission. That is to be the trusted source of news and information, not only on Singapore, but also more broadly on Asia. We also aim to represent Singapore's multicultural communities and to connect them to the world. But beyond newspapers, we also operate magazines, radio, and outdoor advertising. I've already mentioned the Straits Times and Zhaobao. We also publish the Business Times and vernacular newspapers in Malay, Tamil, and Hindi, in addition to our English and Chinese newspapers. We're also the region's leading magazine publisher with 9 titles. We're the newest and fastest growing radio network with 5 stations. And as one of the major advertising networks in Singapore, we own a number of out-of-home billboards and digital signage, engaging an estimated 100 million eyeballs per month. So that's a little bit about us, but I think it's also important to paint a picture of the broader business environment and the context in which we operate. Our industry faces massive disruption. Globally, readers are shifting from print formats to digital channels, and as they make this shift to digital, their consumption habits are regularly changing. We have a growth challenge, not just in terms of revenue, but also in terms of reach and engagement. In some cases, the challenge isn't strictly about growth, but really about staying relevant. So as print is being displaced by digital, we also find that our digital advertising revenue is being eroded by numerous external forces. And so therefore, the industry broadly has started to shift towards a subscription-based revenue model. But as we make this shift, it becomes increasingly important to find new ways to engage and to retain those subscribers. We are competing for attention in a noisy world filled with social media, influencers, and the ability for anyone to make a blog post and have it go viral, regardless of whether that is factual content or not. So in the face of misinformation, fake news, and general fatigue with excessive COVID and polarized political news, we need to do more to earn and to retain public trust, and to discourage the general avoidance of news. And so we must shift hard to digital. And in fact, we must transform in order to remain relevant. We need to be where our audiences are, in the channels that they are engaged in, at the right time, and in the right format. But most importantly, it's critical that we know our audience, that we understand our audience down to the individual level in order to deliver relevance to that audience. But this really is nothing new. The term digital transformation, perhaps especially for us, has begun to lose its meaning. The reality is that our industry has been on a transformation journey really since the arrival of the internet and search engines. So these new channels giving our audiences new channels in which to engage, this journey for us has been ongoing really for around 20 years. So what's different now? Now we have real recognition that something much more fundamental needs to change in order to accelerate our transformation journey. Central to that recognition is the fact that technology needs to be front and center as we transform. And so the infrastructure we build, the products, the experiences that we design and deliver for our audience, these are central to the core of our proposition. It's critical that we engage our audience with the right experiences in the right time in order to be the trusted source of news. So the way that we are approaching this transformation journey is to think very hard about how we can shape the future of journalism by weaving technology and innovation into the fabric of our organization and into the way that we deliver news and information to our audience. We have taken this transformation journey and broken it up across 4 key pillars. We need to empower our journalists with tools and solutions that enable them to deliver credible, accurate, and impartial news. We need to put our audience and their experience of our content front and center in everything that we do and we design. We need to build products and solutions with rock-solid foundations through quality engineering. And we need these products to be able to scale, grow, and adapt to our audience as they change their habits. We also need products and solutions that will allow us to innovate at speed through continuous testing and experimentation. We need to constantly improve our product and services in order to break the news fast to our audience. But while it's very easy to paint this strategic vision, for us, our story really began with a number of fundamentals which we needed to fix first. These fundamentals, these challenges, needed to be addressed in order to establish a firm foundation for transformation. And for us, these challenges existed across 3 areas. These challenges were really starting to hamper our ability to transform and to make progress. Firstly, we had years of underinvestment in our infrastructure. And this underinvestment had led to a number of key outages and disruptions in our applications. These outages had undermined trust with our audience, but also, importantly, with our internal business stakeholders. And this erosion of trust internally was a huge impediment to collaboration and to establishing a unified team across business and technology. We also lacked a strong understanding of our audience. Despite having more than 400 terabytes of data, this data existed in numerous silos around the business, and this made it very difficult for us to understand our audience, which in turn made it almost impossible for us to personalize their experience of our content. Lastly, we really needed to stretch ourselves and to aim to have best-in-class applications. These applications, of course, are critical in terms of how we deliver content to our audience. This is as important as the content itself. And so our user experience, our engagement strategies in our products was something else that we needed to address very importantly. But what's relevant for today's session is to share a bit on our journey on addressing the first pillar, how we are delivering resilience in our infrastructure. And this really is a story about our journey to cloud, our adoption of the cloud. And we saw the adoption of cloud as the primary way for us to reduce downtime and disruption in our applications. We saw it as a key step in improving our performance and our reliability, and also in improving our security posture. But we faced a number of challenges. We had limited in-house resources who were familiar with cloud. We had an infrastructure team who, at the time, were dedicated to modernizing our on-prem data centers. And for them, cloud really represented quite a new paradigm. Secondly, we had separate cloud ops and DevOps teams. They were split between the application teams and the infrastructure teams. These teams had competing priorities, and so found it very difficult to achieve alignment in our cloud operations. And so it was hard to find continuous improvement in our cloud environment, and as a consequence, it was very difficult to achieve significant outcomes at any kind of scale. AMS, for us, was really the catalyst on our cloud transformation journey. Initially, when AMS onboarded into a small number of our AWS accounts, they started by supporting us with basic logging, monitoring, and event management. But quickly that relationship grew. It grew organically, and AMS began to help us deliver outcomes across 4 key areas. AMS, together with our account SA, worked with our teams to start looking at the resilience of our independent and individual applications in cloud. As they looked at those applications, many of which had been lifted and shifted from our data centers to cloud, they started to help us break these monolithic applications down into service-based architectures. And these service-based architectures not only brought improved performance and reliability, but they also aligned much better with our business outcomes. AMS also brought us best practices. They helped us to standardize our operational readiness framework. They helped us to meet compliance and regulatory requirements inside our environments. And key to our cloud migration journey was the need to address resiliency. And of course, a critical part of resiliency is having available applications 24/7. AMS brought us an operations team that could support our applications, providing tier 1 support 24 hours a day. And all these efforts brought our teams much greater efficiency in what they were focusing on. AMS were focused on the routine tasks of patch and incident and backup management. Our teams, therefore, were really much more focused on modernization of our applications. And so today, our collaboration with AMS has really put us in a very strong position. After an initial pilot across 6 of our core AWS accounts, we very quickly got into a phase where AMS was able to onboard into one of our AWS accounts and within 16 days achieve full patch compliance within that account. Today, across our entire AWS footprint, we have 98% patch compliance across all of our accounts, 74% EC2 backup compliance, 95% backup compliance across RDS. These efforts have really brought much improved risk management to our operations. They've really improved our risk posture in cloud. AMS also worked with our teams to conduct joint cloud ops workshops. And during the course of one of these workshops, it was identified that if AMS were given pre-approval to remediate certain security findings, that would greatly increase the frequency of improvements in our accounts. And so, giving AMS the pre-approval for these remediation steps allowed AMS to quickly iterate through security findings in S3, VPCs, our security groups, and our IAM configurations. To date, in total, 58,000 alarms and alerts have been triaged by AMS on our behalf. AMS have also brought in more than 200 security checks through AWS config. These security checks are aligned to CIS and NIST benchmarks. And as a consequence, this has greatly improved our security posture in cloud, and importantly, this has given our business, our organization, much greater confidence in our cloud operations. And for us, after security comes cost optimization. When AMS first onboarded into some of our accounts, we had a number of auto-scaling groups which were managing fleets of EC2, which were hosting our core web tier applications. At the time, a few of these auto-scaling groups, a very small number in fact, were producing more than 90% of our scale-up and scale-down activities. And in some cases, these auto-scaling groups were scaling up and down every 5 or 10 minutes. And this obviously was having massive cost implications, not just in our use of EC2, but also in the downstream systems such as AWS config, CloudWatch, and CloudTrail. And so AMS worked in our production environments with our teams to help to tune these auto-scaling groups. This, of course, reduced our costs in EC2 and those downstream systems as well. They also helped us with various housekeeping tasks, for example, right-sizing of EC2, of RDS, of Redshift. They helped us to establish operations around identifying and then terminating unused EC2 and RDS instances as well. And so, to date, AMS has helped us to reduce our AWS costs by around 21%. And so the other big gain in this process was that our teams were able to focus much more directly on innovation. AMS was now focused on the very heavy lifting of monitoring, tuning, patching our environment, achieving cost optimization as well. Our teams were focused on the modernization of our applications. Today, more than 80% of our workloads are running in AWS. And of those workloads, around 60% have been modernized to use serverless or containerized architectures. We also have a production control tower and landing zone environment, which allows us to create new AWS accounts and onboard existing accounts very quickly. We have a dedicated platform engineering team, which is using Terraform to deliver infrastructure as code assets to our applications teams. This is allowing our applications teams to move much more quickly and with much greater security in cloud. And as part of this efforts, they've also been able to bring much greater automation around our CI/CD pipelines. And so we're shifting left many of our security controls into those pipelines. So this platform engineering team is really focused on modernizing our operations in cloud. they're not focused on heavy lifting, they're not focused on firefighting or production outages. And so thanks to this partnership with AMS, thanks to the solid foundation we now have in our cloud environments, our teams are much more focused on our key transformation initiatives. One of these is to build a first-party data lake on AWS, a first-party data platform, including that data lake and also streaming analytics capabilities. We're also working on an industry-first print and digital advertising portal. And so we will continue to work with AMS. We'll continue to use AMS to help us upskill our own teams, to expand our automation, our tooling around cloud. But we have the intention to offboard AMS from all of our accounts within the next 24 months. And this last point is, I think, an important one because it speaks to the nature of our partnership with AMS. AMS really has been a true partner throughout the various stages of our cloud maturity curve. When we compare AMS to other vendors who lock us into long-term contracts, AMS is focused on enabling customers to skill up fast, to focus on modernization and delivering business outcomes, and they're focused on acting as a bridge for customers' cloud journeys and their adoption of transformation strategies. With that, I'll hand back to Priyanka. Thank you.
Thank you, George, for sharing those learnings with us. So let's recap what we have covered today. As you're designing your IT strategy, make sure you come up with short-term and long-term goals. Your short-term goal could be skills development in your team. Your long-term goal could be that your business-critical applications would be on a resilient architecture. These are just examples. What is important to note here is be relentless about your vision, but be flexible on the approach to get there. And once these goals are defined, align your in-house resources to what matters the most to your business. That could mean making them work on migration or modernization, or even both. And advice here would be don't spend cycles automating legacy. Modernize the workload. The other thing to keep in mind is don't stick to that one-size-fits-all operating model. Cloud allows you to have multiple operating models. An EC2 workload has to be treated differently to an EKS workload. So be open about that thinking. And finally, it is okay to offload operational practices while you are scaling up your transformation. Give up control and bring in cloud experts. Think big and keep your eye on the long-term vision. Before we conclude our session today, I wanted to make sure you are aware of AWS Repost as a resource that is available to you. AWS Repost is a community-driven knowledge-sharing site which is designed to remove technical roadblocks, accelerate innovation, so that you can operate more efficiently. So please check it out. With that, I thank you all for joining us today. You have been a great audience. Please don't forget to give us a survey. We are a data-driven organization, and your survey feedback will help us design the content for next year.